One of my favourite places to visit when in Scotland is the island of Iona. I love the peace that can be found there and the beautifully haunting sounds of worship songs being sung from the top of the hill opposite the imposing abbey. This restored monastic building rises up on the remote Scottish island site where St. Columba established a missionary community in the 6th century. And although it has become a little more commercialised now, it is still a focus for the Iona community, an ecumenical Christian community that actively links over 2,000 Christians worldwide. Many pilgrims and visitors journey to this remote Scottish island, which is only accessible by a foot passenger ferry running across the Sound from the nearby Isle of Mull, another of my favourite places to visit. An inquisitive traveller, curious to know what the locals thought of Iona, asked the ferryman what he thought about the abbey. The ferryman's reply shocked him when he heard that the ferryman had been operating the ferry for over 30 years, and yet he had never walked the 150 yards or so from the landing place to see the abbey for himself, that many of his passengers had come from so far away to visit. The good news was on his doorstep, yet he was unmoved. That ferryman was just like the most respected religious authorities in royal Jerusalem, who were able to quote prophecies foretelling the Messiah's birth in Bethlehem. And yet, when the wise men from distant lands appeared, speaking of wondrous sight in the heavens that pointed to a king's arrival on earth, the scribes, like that ferryman, showed no desire to investigate. They preferred to stay within the city walls rather than venture outside. Alongside the scribes' apathy, there was also King Herod, who, when he heard the news, was in desperate fear of losing his crown. He was worried about being deposed by the Jews' rightful ruler. So he just used the opportunity given by the Magi to ascertain the newborn monarch's location for his own murderous motives, deceitfully exploiting the Magi's insights whilst appearing to help them. It is the Magi, outsiders to Israel and its religion, who are willing to leave their wealth and homeland to journey out into the unknown with gifts for a foreign king. It would have been easy for the Magi to give up on their search, not least when they arrived in Bethlehem to find that no one had any idea who or what they were talking about. They must have thought they had made a mistake, or that their journey had just been a waste of time. Yet they kept on searching and trusting, even after speaking to Herod, until finally they found the child that they were looking for. As this gospel reaches its climax, the title King of the Jews will be spoken again, but in accusation, not acclamation, over a dying king, mocked by a crown of thorns. The bright star at Jesus' birth will be replaced by unnatural darkness at his death. But Jesus' ultimate resurrection victory will seal God's salvation as open to all people, in all places, for all time. I'm sure that you have either seen or heard of that little saying, "Wise men still seek him," which appears on cars and church notice boards over the Christmas period. Of course, it is perfectly true, for there are many today who still search in vain to find faith. It is not that they don't want to believe, quite the opposite, but there is so much happening in our world that is hard to make sense of, so much that contradicts a loving God. But we can be humbled by how much some of those looking for God are willing to commit to their search. Sometimes those fresh to the Christian faith can be more energetic and responsive in their spiritual lives than those for whom church life has lost its luster. For the scribes in the story, their faith has been dulled by familiarity. Herod, though, is a more challenging figure. We too may have our own personal patch where we are king in our own lives, and we do not want to surrender our rule to the one who has a more rightful claim to our loyalties. Matthew urges us to regain our wonder and worship for the King, to learn from the wisdom of those who followed the star as it led them into the presence of the light of the world. How far out of our comfort zones are we prepared to go to meet with Christ, even if we are not quite sure of the way? Like the Magi, we will reach our destination if we have the courage to keep on seeking. If we persevere on the journey, we will find the wonder of God revealed in Jesus. And what will we offer of our material, emotional and spiritual wealth to the King when we reach him? Perhaps the words of a well-loved carol can help. What can I give him, poor as I am? If I were a shepherd, I would bring a lamb. If I were a wise man, I would do my part. Yet, what can I give him? Give my heart. Amen.